All right, how y'all doing? This is Chris with Bama Law, and you're watching Bama Law. I'd like to um, go over today, if I could, a little bit of the kerfuffle that's in the news. I think it was on the 20th, the executive order was done. Trump's interpretation of, when I say Trump, it was obviously one of his advisors' interpretation of the 14th Amendment with birthright citizenship. I can say in law school, his reading of it, and now my changed opinion of it, is not what's taught. They teach literally that you come across the border, woman reaches the border and goes plop. Oh, hey baby, citizenship. That's not right. I've never agreed with it, but I'm also a strict constitutionalist, and I thought, well, we just need to amend the Constitution. We'll just change it. That way, no one can say it's not. It's something different. It's easier said than done. Now, after rereading it, I don't know how I missed this, but we're also going to look at briefly one of the gentleman's comments that wrote the 14th Amendment and his reasoning behind it, which may change your opinion as well. With that being said, let's get into it. And I think there's I would like to go over, I think there's an injunction against it, but we may not have time for that today. Okay. So, as you see here on the screen, this is the executive order. It's from the website, whitehouse.gov. That's not the one I want to show first. Bear with me. Let's see. No. How y'all doing? I finally got my microphone to work where I can actually hear it through the earphones. Nightmare. I had to use GarageBand to do it. It's not the best scenario, but I mean, it's better than not hearing me at all or hearing myself at all. But let me go to this window. Aha! Here's my text file. Great. Let's see. Yes, we're done. There we go. Good to go. All right. And as I was saying before, we are the only country that I know of for now that has literally a birthright citizenship just from crossing the border. As long as you're not a diplomat, which apparently that's not acceptable, even though it's not in the amendment. If you're not a diplomat, there's a couple other uh, carve outs. You come across the border, you drop a baby out of you, doesn't matter as long as you're across the line. Boom, kid citizen. Maybe you aren't. Maybe you're a fleeing fugitive from another country, which you would not qualify either. Kid does, and that's a problem. I think it's a problem because what it gets used for is nefarious means. Oh, if you think, no, it should be great for the person. Yeah, for the person it is, not for the people that are using them as a pawn. And you may say, well, how does that manifest itself? That's easy. I just have to get people to come here. I don't even need the people to really be citizens. I, I just need illegals to come across the United States border and live in my state to bolster my numbers for the census. Every 10 years, we do a census. Based upon that, we get more representatives in the House. The Senate doesn't change. The House, it does. So if I allow millions in, hell, I may gain 2, 3, 5 votes extra. When you do that in enough states, you dominate. No one can beat you. You can quash any um, uh, minority type of um, objection in the Congress. You can stop. You can impose your will on the minority of people, which is a real problem. That was never meant. That was never intended to be allowed. You should not be able to import people to boost your numbers to win. Wrong. Now with the citizenship issue, you shouldn't. The same thing matter goes for that. You shouldn't be able to come across the border, dump a kid out of your body, and go. It's a kid holding up like it's God. What was the name of the little tiger in the Lion King where he holds the baby up? Yay. Yeah, you shouldn't be able to do that. You should not be able to just come across the border, pop a baby out, and go. They're a citizen. I need to stay. No, you both go home. But that's what they teach in law school. The second you cross the border, the kid comes out, he or she is a citizen. That's it. It's as simple as that. And they go back to a I think it's 1895, 1898 case. Uh, it's a Chinese dude like Wong Ark or something like that. And we may try to, hopefully, we'll come across it. I'm trying to keep this video under 20 minutes. Mr. Ark uh, was a Chinese, well, he was a Chinese national as well as he alleged a U.S. citizen. His parents were lawful residents in the United States. And apparently from 1872, I think when he was born, to 1895 when this happened, he also lived there in San Francisco, and his parents did. At some point around that time, they left and went back to China. So the document said they were under the jurisdiction of the Emperor of China. All right. So he comes back on a ship. There was no immigrant. Remember, there is no immigration at this time. That didn't start until 1906 with the I think it was another Alien Act that they passed that stupidly allowed the states to give up their control of citizenship to the federal government. That was where it started. All right. So this is prior to that. He comes in and goes, hey, he gets to the custom uh, and duties guy at the port and says, hey, I need to come aboard, come ashore. He says, no, you're not a citizen. He said, yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm a citizen. What are you talking about? I was born in uh, San Francisco. I lived there I still live there. What are you talking about? I'm just on a ship. No, they said no. So his case went to the Supreme Court, and ultimately the Supreme Court said that because he was born here, he was a citizen. Here's the problem. What distinguishes his case from reality of what we have today, which is if you come across the border illegally and plop a baby out, is that baby a citizen? I used to agree that although I didn't like the Constitution amendment of the 14th Amendment and its wording, I always thought we needed a change. I was an original constructionist, and that's just the way that's the stare decisis we've had since 1890s. So I always thought we needed to change it until this happened. I somehow never read the amendment correctly, and I never went in and dug as to the gentleman who passed it or wrote it, what his meaning behind the language even was. So let's get into that. All right. As far as I was saying, I don't think anyone else in the world has citizenship so easy to obtain as we do. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Um, it just is. So let's take Israel, for example. Let's do, yeah, here we are. Okay. Gaining Israeli citizenship can be gotten by several pathways. Birth, obviously. If you are born to an Israeli parent, you are automatically given citizenship. Parent. Okay. I can't go to Israel on vacation, have a baby, and go, oh, he's Israeli. Doesn't work like that. Doesn't work in England either. None of them. Law of return. This is the only liberal, I don't mean liberal in political sense, like easily applicable rule to get citizenship in Israel. It's easier. And this is the only country that I know has this type of stuff. I don't know. I'm sure others do, but most countries are more strict than this. We are easily the most liberal with citizenship in the world. Um, but the second way to get in Israel is law of return. This allows Jews, their children, and grandchildren to immigrate to Israel and gain citizenship. Includes their spouses, their children, and grandchildren. Meaning the spouses or the kids do not have to be halakhically Jewish at all. They just have to be a spouse and their kid. Now, you ask me, well, what about non-Jews? I'm glad you asked that because it says, yeah, naturalization. Non-Jewish foreign nationals can become citizens if they live in Israel for 3 years as permanent residents, meaning a lawful resident, and they have to have a fluency in Hebrew. They teach you that when you do we call it to make aliyah. Aliyah means literally to go up. So if anybody's ever been to Jerusalem, you know that um, Jerusalem's built kind of on a mountain. It's kind of elevated. And so anytime you go there, you're going up it. That's what it means to make aliyah. So you're going up. That's just the word they use. Anyway, um, with this rule, marriage for excuse me, spouses can still get citizenship. Um, um, Spouses of Israeli citizens can still apply for citizenship. Each path has its own set of requirements and processes, so it's important to research. Blah blah blah, and then of course that's all that is on that. So in Israel, you have multiple ways of doing it, similar to the United States, but more restrictive. Birth, if your parent is Israeli, you get citizenship. Otherwise, no bueno. You're done. You ain't getting it. Sorry. Not happening. Even if your parent is Jewish, you're not getting it. They've got to be a citizen. So that's different from us. Here, we just let you pop a baby out and go, "Boop, citizen." Fantastic. Not fantastic. It's not fair. It's not right. What about all the people that come legally? There's no benefit. They might as well just come all illegally. The hell with it. The second way to get it is the law of return. All right, so that means any Jew that goes through the process, and let me tell you, my oldest daughter went through it, and they go in deep. They really go in deep. If you convert, you better show your papers for certificate of conversion, Hatafat Hatafat Dam Brit. If you're a male, I can't remember what they call it for women. Uh, anyway, because women don't have to be circumcised, so that's that's a side note. Anyway, you get your conversion done. You can actually apply under the rule of law for Aliyah and go to Israel. Naturalization. Non-Jews living there legally again has to be a legal resident for 3 years. Has to demonstrate also Hebrew fluency. We don't even do that here for English. For God's sake, I'm sick of finding people here. It's like, oh, how many years you been here for? Doing it through an interpreter. I've been here 7 years, and you still can't speak English. I wouldn't go anywhere. I don't even want to travel somewhere like, I don't know, Colombia, without learning at least basic Spanish. It's not their job to cater to me. It's my job to cater to them. Now, you could argue and say, well, you're giving money into their economy. They want to make money. Well, that's fine, but that's just my opinion on it. Obviously, if you're going for a week, you need just some basic stuff to get through. Uh, Marriage, you espousal of it again, a spouse of an Israeli citizen can also apply for citizenship, but you've got to be the other spouse has to be a citizen, not not both of them not being citizens. They have no ability as or non-Jews, or if they're non-citizens, to just come in and go, I want my wife to get a citizenship. I want her or my husband to get citizenship. It's not how it works. So you've got to there are some prerequisites. Okay. We don't have that in the United States. It, it's just cross the border. Now, granted, you can't go through, I say that a lot of states are waiving it. Um, that if you come in illegally, they're like, well, you've been here more than 20 years. We're just going to forget it and waive you. There's a guy, I think, in Connecticut who is uh, last name of Molina. I just saw a video of him last week. He has a law firm. Yeah, he's been a judge. He also got arrested and is getting his ass sent back. Why? He never was here legally. They allowed him to take the bar exam, be a lawyer, etc., and just on a state level, just ignored it. That's a problem because unfortunately, we gave up the state's right under the 14th Amendment, which we're about to go through, to regulate citizenship. Originally into 1906, when the first Immigration and Naturalization Act was passed, the state was the arbiter. The state. There's a gentleman, he's passed away from 70 years ago, probably, in Birmingham. There's a place called Levy's Jewelry. Uh, it's on Second. It's on Second Avenue North. And if you go in, and they used to have it, the guy's name was Charles Denneberg, and it had his citizenship certificate on the wall. It was like 1903. And it was interesting because I looked down and, like, at the time, I just assumed it'd be a U.S. citizenship paper. No, it wasn't. It said in the Circuit Court, Mobile County, Alabama, 1903. And it said, Charles Denneberg does hereby absolve any allegiance, titles, and et cetera, to any king, um, principality, fill in the blank. And it literally had a fill in the blank, and it said, or, and it said Tsar of Russia. It was issued by the county. That's how he got his citizenship. The state of Alabama gave it to him. Then by fiat, he became a U.S. citizen. Well, the state stupidly gave it up in 1906. Well, we want to make it more regulation or regulatory on it. We want to, we got to get it regulated. So we give up this authority, then we don't get it back. We're we're hosed. So that's the problem with assenting to things to the feds, is that once you assent to them, you never get it back. They just keep it. So now the feds have it. And unfortunately, under Wong, Mr. Ark's case, I think it's Wong Ark, AR, I think it's ARCK. I think it's the last name. And it may come up in this. The court said, well, hey, look, his parents were here. He was born here. He's a citizen. You can't deny him entry. But is that really what happened? Is that really the case? Let's dive in here. Okay. The 14th Amendment states, and there's several sections, articles that we don't need to go into. We've heard it for 4 damn years. We don't need to go into it. But there's one, section 1, that is what we need to look at. Okay. 14th Amendment, section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Okay. Subject. What does that mean? We're going to go over that. Are citizens of these United States and of the state where they reside. The United States and the state where they reside. That's a problem, because a lot of people are not. You've got to become because remember, we gave up the state's control of citizenship. So they're not even becoming state citizens. Some states are trying to, like, for instance, this lawyer I just told you about, I think it was in Connecticut. They gave him citizenship. That's the hard part. We gave it up to the feds stupidly. They passed a law and we assented. I think under the original interpretation of it, hey, if Connecticut wants to give it to him, okay, that's fine. But it doesn't mean that, if you come across the border illegally, your kid should be a citizen. Doesn't mean anything. That's not valid. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge privileges and immunities. Remember, I talked about in another video, the privileges and immunities clause is ginormous. It covers everything that is not in the Bill of Rights, because there are way more rights than what's listed. They were not going to sit there and enumerate all of those rights. We have many, many more rights than that. So, for instance, it's on the Constitution, but you have a right to work. You have a right to work. You have a right to get married. You have a right to free travel. There's all kinds of rights under the Privileges and Immunities Clause. You have a right to have your driver's license. Well, that's not a right to get it, but you have a right for it to be recognized under full faith and credit by other states. So that way, let's say Missouri can't say, well, anybody from Illinois, we're not recognizing their license. Can't do that. Can't do that. So shall abridge the privileges and immunities of citizens of these United States, nor shall any person, or sorry, I can't read. I still have glasses. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. That's all it says. That's it. That's all it says. All persons born or naturalized in these United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. What does that mean? Everyone's always assumed, including in law school. I'm telling you, they beat it in your head. You come across the border, you're ascending to the jurisdiction. Yeah, you can be criminally prosecuted. You can be even sued. You're here. But is that really the case? We're going to find out about what the gentleman who wrote the amendment actually said as to that, okay? Let's go on. And here we go with sections 2, 3, and 4. It talks about debt of the U.S. Of a state and U.S. government. And then it talks about insurrection. We've heard that for 5 years. We don't need to hear it again. I'm sick of it. Does it apply to illegal aliens or just lawful residents? Or you could even say a lawful alien. The court never addressed that issue. They did it without addressing it. They did it almost as if, and this happened a lot in the constitutional debates. For instance, the Bill of Rights. The Federalists fought them because they thought it was stupid. They're like, well, no, we don't need this. Of course, there's more rights, privileges, and immunities. It's plain. Of course, we have more rights as English or common law under common law. Um, we don't have to enumerate them all. Luckily, Madison was smart to get the compromise. Say, well, let's at least do 10. Let's at least have a baseline so that can't be perverted. And that was a smart. That was smart in his. Uh, Looking back in the history, that was smart of him because we needed it. Congress have power to enforce it by appropriate legislation. Um, the court case in ARC relied on what's called a doctrine of jus soli, or right of the soil. And but what does that mean and how broad is it? We'll find out soon. Um, the question is, to whom did it apply, and does the court, or will the court still uphold it 140 plus years later? I don't know. Might. It may not. They may say, hey, this isn't the correct way to interpret it. Let's go to, let me think. If I want to go, where do I want to go? Hang on. Let's go back to here. Hang on 1 second. Sorry. Present. No, so I want window. No, I don't want that either. This is what I want. Here we go. Finally. Oh, thank you, God. All right. Protecting the meaning. This is the White House website. Protecting the meaning of value of American citizenship. Proclamation by executive order, 20th of January 25. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of these United States, it is hereby ordered. Section 1, purpose. The privilege of these United States, I can't talk today. The privilege of United States citizenship is priceless, profound gift. Yeah, that is true. I think it's a gift. And I think we're very lucky to have it, because you could be in a country where you don't have these rights. They can throw you in prison for violation of First Amendment. Like England, just like England, they totally ignored their common law, and they just throw people in prison. No, you've offended a Muslim, or you've offended an LGBTQIAI plus $ whatever they've come up with today. You should be able to say what you want, so long as you're not inciting a riot. I mean, this is ridiculous. People are getting decades in prison over this. This is unprecedented. The 14th Amendment states, and here we are. Of course, they're going to quote it. I don't know why. I didn't think they would. All persons born or naturalized in the United States, subject to jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and the state in which they reside. That provision rightly repudiated the Supreme Court decision in Dred Scott v. Sanford, which, to boil it down, basically said that, and this is their term, Negroes at the time were slaves, or who were slaves were chattels. They were just chattel. They were not citizens. They were chattel, which chattel is a old French word for property, stuff that you own. That's it. So that was 1857, predated the war between the states by a few years. They go on to say it misinterpreted the Constitution as permanently excluding people of African descent. And remember, when they did the 14th Amendment, whom were they trying to protect? By legislation, they purposely excluded the Native Americans. Totally. In fact, the court has recently come to the conclusion, hey, look, they're a sovereign people too. They have their own, they can have, they are do and can have their own, judicial system for punishment, etc. We don't need to be getting involved on stuff in a reservation. It's their land. So that was excluded. So we have given it to them. I think in the late 1800s, they got it, citizenship by legislation. They do not have it by the 14th Amendment, period. I know that's mind-boggling, but they do not have that by the 14th Amendment. It is done solely upon congressional statute, which could be rescinded. That's scary too. Congress is permanently excluding people of African descent from eligibility to U.S. citizenship solely based on their race. But the 14th Amendment has never been interpreted to extend citizenship universally to everyone born in the U.S. Um, yeah, that's not right. Here we go. The 14th Amendment has always excluded from birthright citizenship persons who were born in the U.S. but not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. What does that mean? That is a huge. This is the contention right here. What can that mean? Subject to the. Does it mean when you cross the border, you're like, hey, I know I can be charged with a crime. I can't go kill people. I can't deal drugs. I can't do any of this stuff. I'll be arrested. So I'm subjecting myself to jurisdiction. Well, that's criminal jurisdiction. What kind of other jurisdiction is it? That's going to be something we have to deal with. And I think they go through it in their executive order fairly well to where it explains the logic. Consistent with this misunderstanding, the Congress has further specified legislation: a person born in the U.S., subject to the jurisdiction thereof, is a national and citizen of the U.S. at birth, generally mirroring the amendment. That's another issue. They're mirroring the amendment, they think. So Congress has passed a law that says the same thing. So this is what they teach in law school. You have the amendment, it says A. Congress says that they pass a law that also says A. Therefore, A is the answer. You must allow anyone who comes across and plops a baby out, they're a citizen. That's a problem. It's a problem. Many people look on it and go, oh, we're such a great, noble country to do that. It's wonderful. We're also idiots for allowing it because there should be something else. Why do we allow that and then make people go through citizenship process that takes years, decades sometimes? Why do we do that? What's the point? My aunt's from Vietnam. She came over in 71, I think. Um, and she finally, I mean, it was until, God, the early noughts under Bush, where she had to go and take her green card and convert it to citizenship. Pass test, flying colors. It's not a big deal. So she's a U.S. citizen. But damn, she was here 30 something, almost 30 years or over 30 years before she became a citizen. There's no excuse for that. You should just be a citizen. But she came legally. She had lawful alien status. She always had it. Many of these people, the vast majority come in, are illegal, and the states are just ignoring it to the detriment of everyone else. That's a problem. Um, yeah, here we are. Among the categories of individuals born in the United States and not subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the privilege of U.S. citizenship does not automatically extend to persons born in the U.S. One, when that person's mother was unlawfully present in the U.S. This is their reasoning. President's reasoning was unlawfully present in the U.S. and the father was not a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth, or when that person's mother's present in the U.S. at the time of said person's birth was lawful but temporary. Excuse me, temporary. So she was on a visa. Here as a student, or I don't know, here as a just traveling around the country for a few weeks. Poof, she has a baby. Okay, it still shouldn't apply. Here we go. Under the auspices of the visa waiver program, or a student or visiting on a student work or tourist visa, and the father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time. So meaning, just like Israel, they say, look, one of your parents has to be an Israeli citizen, and if you're born here, then you get citizenship. If not, have a good life. That's it. That's what they're talking about here. All right. The mother comes in, she's unlawful, she has a child, and the kid has no parent. The father's not a citizen, or the mother's not a citizen. She comes in unlawfully, has a kid, or she's here on a temporary basis, but lawfully. Man, she ain't got there's no ties to the country for the kid. They'll say they're both from, I don't know, Spain. Spain is, that's fine. But if they're coming here from Spain and they're not here legally, you've got a problem to become a citizen. You should not just be able to come across the damn ocean or walk through the land of South America and plop a baby out and say, well, that's it. I'm done. They're a citizen. No. The president's argument is if either one had been a citizen at the time, even though they were here um, uh, lawfully, but on a temporary basis, such as a student or visitation visa for tourism, it's not acceptable. So when the person's mother, when that person's mother's, that's way too many possessive plurals, um, presence in the United States at the time of said person's birth was lawful. Um, it's saying this does not apply. Take it back. I'm so sorry. This does not apply when this happens. So let's reread it again. Number two, when that person's mother's presence in the U.S. at the time of said person's birth was lawful, but temporary, such as visiting the United States under the auspices of a visa waiver program, living on a student visa or a work or tourist visa, and the father was not a U.S. citizen. So if the father had been a U.S. citizen, it could get citizenship. The father's a U.S. citizen. They're here lawfully. That's fine. And then you could flip that in reverse. If the mother is, let's say she's a U.S. citizen and I don't know, she's dual citizen with England and she comes, I don't know, to visit and then has a baby prematurely. She's a citizen. You could argue that, okay, the kid should be one. The father, let's see, visiting the United States in the auspices of the visa waiver program, and the father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of the birth, meaning that that should exclude them. That's what their argument is. Section 2 policy. It is the policy of these United States that no department or agency of the U.S. government shall issue documents recognizing citizenship or accept documents issued by state. Now, here's a problem. As we read in the amendment, the states up until 1906, again, they shouldn't have ascended to the jurisdiction or the control of the federal government. Until that time, the state gave you citizenship, and then by fiat, you automatically had U.S. citizenship. That was the way they were enforcing the 14th Amendment. And remember, who is it protecting? There was one group of people, and that's it, former slaves. Because otherwise, they would have said, oh, well, they're not citizens. We're deporting them all. Yeah, you can't do that. And that's the point of the amendment. At that time, it was to cover the freed slaves and their children. That's it. That's all it was intended. You can't sit there and tell me that they were, oh, in 150 years, it'll be great. We can allow people from all over Central and South America to come in and just have babies and they'll be citizens. No, they were not exactly welcoming people at that time. They were pretty xenophobic. They just didn't want them here. But they knew they had to protect the former slaves. They had to. These people had been here, many of them, for over 100 years. So, or their family had been. So they're citizens. And they counted for the census. That's, I mean, what are we, yeah, you gotta take care of them. They had just fought the bloodiest war in U.S. history with over 600,000 men dying. They had to fix the issue. This is why they fought. Or this is why they thought they fought. Or accept documents. But my point is with the state documents, if we were under the old prior to 1906 immigration laws, they would not be able to say, we're not going to accept state documents purporting to recognize U.S. citizenship. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it because it came from the state. We assented. We gave it to the feds. That's something to argue separately in the Supreme Court. That's just my opinion. Or other governments or authorities purporting to recognize U.S. citizenship to persons, one, when that person's mother was unlawfully present. Remember these terms, unlawfully and lawfully. They are going to be instrumental in figuring this out. Unlawfully present in the U.S. and the person's father was not the United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of birth, or when that person's mother's presence in the U.S. was lawful but temporary, and the person's father was not a U.S. citizen or lawful resident at the time of the person's birth. Remember, in the case that I told you about the Chinese guy, Mr. Ark, his parents eventually went back to China. but they were here legally. They were here legally. They had stayed for several decades. They were here legally. And he was born here. Therefore, he was a citizen. That was the only part. The court just never opined in that case to say, hey, look, this is why he's a citizen. Everyone took it, and they teach it in law school that because they came here, legal or not, I had a baby, he got it. That's not what the court said. They just never addressed it as they say that his parents were here legally. They do, but they just don't address the nexus between the two of them. All they do is go in to say, hey, look, they were lawful residents. It's in the opinion. I'm gonna try to go over that. Not with this video. I have to be another one to read that opinion because it's going to be referenced, I think, in this. But the court just said, look, he was born here. He's a citizen because his parents were lawfully residents here too. That's it. But instead, people have taken that as a birthright. You come across the border, plop a baby out, citizen. That's not what it said. That's not what the amendment says. Subsection of A shall apply only to persons who are born within the U.S. after 30 days from the date of this order. That was to cover slaves. That's it. This is it. That's the only thing they cared about. Should it apply only to them? Well, under an originalist construction, yeah. Yeah. And then Congress can come up with other guidelines as to who can be a citizen. That'd be my argument, but that's not quite where he goes with this. And then, oh, excuse me. I don't know why I'm thinking this isn't the amendment. I'm sorry. This is subsection A of this order. This is for the EO. So he's saying that this executive order shall apply only to persons who are born within the United States after 30 days from this order, or within the United States after 30 days from this order. Meaning anybody prior to that, you're covered. We're not going to come get you. We're not going to kick you out. You're a citizen. After that, February 20th, 29th, we're going to start doing it. And you're not going to get citizenship. You're not getting it. Not unless one of your parents is a citizen and they're here lawfully. Then you can get it. Nothing in this order shall be construed to affect the entitlement of other individuals, including lawful or children of lawful residents, to obtain documentation of their citizenship. Again, we're going about the lawful permanent residents. Lawful permanent residents, not lawful temporary. Like I'm just here for 2 years on a visa. It's a lawful permanent. That's a big difference. Like a green card. And then he goes through enforcement, and the rest of it is it's just the dicta of the order. This order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive, procedural, enforceable at law and equity by any party against the United States, its departments, agencies, blah, 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 etc. Okay, so we got that down. Now, let's look, because he's not, I thought he did, but he's not citing the case of Mr. Ark, and he's not citing, which he should have. That's just my opinion. He should have cited the gentleman's comments who wrote the damn amendment. That's the best way to do it, is go back in history and look at it. That's how we should be doing it. And unfortunately, they just don't do it. The people forget about it. Like, oh, we can take modern, the look through rose-tinted glasses for the beliefs of modernity to look back on the history to determine what they meant. You can't use today's logic to go back and look at history and go, oh, well, that's what they must have meant. No, you go back to the documentation and go, oh, I read what they meant. He freaking told me. It's in a book. That's what you do. So let's go. Let me go for this other document. Oh, hey, I got rid of the flag. I just put my license up. So a little bit bland. Not sure I like it though. Share screen. Let me find it. Yeah. Here we go. Perfect. My Tourette's is bad today. I'm so sorry. God, it sucks. It's not a fun disorder to deal with. Okay. Let's see if I can get this to go. This is a little bit longer of document to read through. I'm gonna try to skip as much as I can. We'll just stick to the important stuff. Don't need that. All right. We've talked about the 14th Amendment, born or naturalized and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That is a big deal. Okay. This is where it's going to hang on. The rest about representation, we don't need any of that. That's the only one we're concerned with right now. And it says they shall have the power, Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation provisions of this article. So they can do it subject to the provision of Section 1. Now, the question is, does this apply to illegal aliens or only the lawful residents? Which one does it apply to? Well, the court never really addressed that issue. They only only addressed the principle of just soli, right of the soul. I tell you, I'm having a great day. Um, just soli, which is the right of the soil, giving the idea that if you come across the border and pop a baby out, that's it. They're citizens. That has been interpreted that way almost since day one. It is a problem. I don't think it, and I'm about to show you the gentleman who wrote it, Jacob B. Howard, his comments on what the hell did he mean with the amendment. It only was to protect slaves, former slaves. So let's see let's use history and tradition to actually figure out what the hell they meant, because it's a big deal. All right. The question now is going to be to the court, to whom does this even apply? If this doctrine still exists and is still applicable, to whom does it even apply? Or will they uphold the last 140 years as, well, this is just the way we do it. That's the way it has to be. Yeah, it's a problem. And they're going to have to figure it out. They don't have a choice. The Supreme Court is going to have to weigh in on this. They can't dump it off like they always do and say, oh, well, we'll let district court or court of appeals. Yeah, that's fine. This is a big deal. It's a big deal. All right. Jacob B. Howard, the writer of the amendment, he did make comments about the concept of who is a lawful person in the context of the 14th Amendment, particularly regarding its citizenship clause and the right it guarantees. His statement clarified the scope of citizenship and the applicability of the amendment to individuals within the U.S. He further explained that the citizenship clause, which states that all persons born or naturalized in the U.S. and subject to jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the U.S. in the state in which they reside, was designed to resolve ambiguities about citizenship, especially in the wake of the infamous Dred Scott decision. Remember, that held that he was a chattel, that slaves were chattel. They were just, here's a good way to put it, they were just property. Okay. The same thing with the Alabama IVF case. May not like it, but the reason why they said, hey, these are human lives that you've destroyed, or through your negligence you've allowed to get destroyed. That was the only way they could get any recompense, because if they're not under Alabama law, those embryos were chattels, meaning it was just property. Maybe you spent 10,000, maybe you spent 50,000 doing the IVF. Okay, you might get a judgment to get your money back. Is that how much a life is worth? What if the mother could no longer make eggs and could not do anything? That means they lost all. Let's say they did 14 embryos, because not all of them obviously take. Um, they've lost every chance to have a child of their own. Every one of them. How do you recompense somebody for that? I don't think it's a chattel. And Alabama Supreme Court had to decide that. Look, in order for them to be able to sue for the loss of a child, we have to declare these children. Otherwise, they're going to get $10 or maybe 10,000 or whatever they paid. And a jury could have said, well, they're just embryos. They weren't like $20. That that's not enough. That's not enough. It did not shut IVFs down. It only gave them personhood for the purpose of that. So, like that case, where normally embryos would be treated in most states as a chattel, as a property. The Dred Scott decision said the same thing, that the only thing slaves were property, not people. Now, with that said, uh, his citizenship clause stated that all persons born or naturalized in the U.S. subject to jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the U.S. and the state in which they reside was designed to resolve ambiguities about citizenship, especially in the wake of the infamous Dred Scott decision. The court in that decision had ruled that blacks, whether free or enslaved, were not citizens. I just read that again. Whether free or enslaved. Most states, if you had a freed slave, especially in Louisiana, if you were only a percentage black, or what they call mulatto, you could own slaves and they voted. I mean, the state still gave it, but they're saying, well, look, under the 1857 Dred Scott, they're not even citizens of the U.S. That's a problem. Again, that's a problem. So they had to create an amendment to fix it for that particular group. I I don't think they ever thought it would be taken out of context. And that's why you have to almost write everything down in an amendment or a law and say, you cannot use this for any other purpose other than to deal with freed slaves. And I don't even know if that would have been enough. You still would have had some asshat coming behind it going, well, that was only applicable then, but they can come up with all kinds of stupid logic. It's not logic, it's just stupidity. It is what it is. It says what it says. But you have to look at history to go, why does it say that? Why didn't they put that in there? Because just like with the Bill of Rights, the Federalists thought, well, of course there's other rights. We don't need to even listen. It's just a waste of paper, parchment. We don't need to do that. Come on. There's other rights. Luckily, the Anti-Federalists and even the Federalists, Madison, said, okay, look, we need to have 10 amendments. We'll do 10. That gives us a baseline of the most important. There was many more that never made it, but because they still exist as privileges and immunities. Let's go look at Mr. Howard's comment on what a lawful person is. He clarified that the phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof was crucial in defining who could be considered a lawful person for purposes of citizenship and under the amendment. He noted the amendment's intent was to include the following: all persons born or naturalized in the U.S. except, here we go. This is why looking at things not with today's viewpoint and the glasses of today, but looking at it through the lenses of the people at the time it was written. That's the whole point of it. All right. So it did not apply to foreign diplomats and their kids. They are not fully subject to the laws due to diplomatic immunity. That's the way it's always been. They can be yanked at any time and they can be booted. Another one, and this was under statute. It's been changed in the late 1800s to actually give them, but like I said, Native Americans are only given citizenship by statute, not by the amendment, which is totally effed up. Just my opinion. But it is the law. Native Americans who are members of sovereign tribal nations. At that time, they were considered to be subject to the jurisdiction of their tribes, not the United States. Now, they did do a Citizenship Act in 24, and recently, I have to do a whole nother video on it, just a few years ago, saying that, no, hey, um, these are sovereign. These tribes are sovereign. They have their own jurisdiction. They need to try people criminally for crimes committed against natives and also on their reservation. That had really not ever been done. The state would like to come in and go, oh, he committed murder. We're going to prosecute him for murder. Well, it's on their reservation. It needs to be done by them. And they still have the ability to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. So it's not like they're denying it. It's not like we're setting up two forms of justice. It's not the case. But they have, under treaty, sovereign territory. All right. The other example is persons not lawfully present or residing in these United States. This interpretation has since evolved in judicial decisions. All right. Persons not lawfully present or residing. Well, who does that cover? These people are not allowed citizenship or their children if they are not lawfully present or residing in the U.S. legally. If you come from Guatemala and you're pregnant, man, I'm sorry, you crossed the border, you're here illegally. Now, if you come on a green card and you're saying, yeah, yeah, kid's citizen, that's fine. Yeah, that's what they're saying. That's fine. Totally fine. Don't try to come in the back door though and plop a baby out and say, hey, look, he's a citizen. That way I can stay. No, that was not the point of the amendment. This is nowhere near what the courts have held for decades, as they, like those who wish to change the demographic of these United States, as well as the political power thereof, that everyone who merely crosses the line, the border, uh, or border is subject to free citizenship. That is essentially what the courts have gone with, for whatever reason. I think it's political, but that's what they've gone with. That's what they beat into your head in law school, constant. But no one ever goes back to read this guy and what he meant by the language of the amendment. No one. No one goes back, especially in law school. I challenge you to find me a law school that does that. You're not going to find it. All right. So, a key statement, and we'll do this, read this, and then we're going to wrap it up because I'm not going to sit here for 2 hours doing this. It's not that hard of a subject matter to learn. His key statement, he remarked, this will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers accredited to the government of these United States, but will include every other class of persons. This will not include. This is the guy that wrote the amendment and put it forth. This is what he meant. This is what he's saying he meant. Not, of course, include persons born in the U.S. who are foreigners, aliens. That's a problem. That's a problem. Foreigners and aliens. Who are they? I mean, you can have you can have you can have a foreign alien that's a lawful resident. He's talking about lawful residents. It was not supposed to include these people. His whole purpose was to deal with freed slaves. This was the point of the amendment. It has been so misconstrued for so long, for whatever reason, and I think it's all political. I just I think it's political. It's also an easier way to resolve a case. Well, it's always, Mr. Art got citizenship. Yeah, because his parents were lawful residents. That's why. This has got to be rectified by the courts, and unfortunately by the Supreme Court. This explanation clarified that the amendment aimed to establish a clear and inclusive definition of citizenship while also setting limits based on the legal political relationship of the individual to the United States. Broader implications. Howard's focus on lawful presence and jurisdiction reinforced the principle that the 14th Amendment was intended to secure rights of all individuals in the U.S. who were subject to the laws thereof, especially the newly freed slaves, ensuring status as full citizens. Full stop. That's the end. That's what it was meant for. His comments continue to influence legal interpretations of citizenship, including debates over birthright. That was his point. It was only meant for slaves, and it does not cover anybody here unlawfully or diplomats. It does not cover that. That was his point. That's a big deal. We have to look at that. I think we need to not only look at it, we need to use it in our interpretation from henceforth as to what it meant. So let's go back to the executive order here, if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. That's not what I want. All right, so I am back. No, I don't want to do that. Come on, present. Yeah, there we go. All right, we're back. Good. So we're back to this. This is his executive order, and we'll wrap it up. He wants to protect the meaning and value of American citizenship. Okay. What is his argument again? All right. He states the amendment. He gives us the same law of what the guy came up with and wrote. And then he's repudiating Dred Scott v. Sanford, which it misinterpreted the Constitution as permanently excluding people of African descent. 14th Amendment has never been interpreted to extend citizenship universally to everyone born in the U.S. We just saw that from the guy that wrote it. He told us that. Mr. Howard told us that. It has always been always excluded from birthright citizenship persons who were born in the U.S. that are not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. You cannot be submitting yourself to jurisdiction thereof if you're here illegally. You can't. It means you have no intent on really being a citizen and being here for the long term. You're just transient. No different than somebody on a travel visa. They can't do it either. As of right now, yeah, they could. They have a baby. Oh, citizen. No, that's not the point. Consistent with this understanding, the Congress further specified that a person born in the United States subject to jurisdiction thereof is a national and citizen of the U.S. at birth. 8 U.S.C. 1401, generally mirroring that amendment. Among the categories of individuals born in the U.S. not subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the privilege of the United States citizenship does not automatically extend to persons born in the U.S. Number one. Let's think about Mr. Howard's statements. We just went over it. Think about his statement and what it meant when he passed it. And now let's look at today's rules. Okay. This is what the president is interpreting it. This is what he wants to do. So let's look at it through the eyes or the glasses of the 1870s when that amendment passed. Okay. Or late 1860s. I can't remember which. So it's either 1867 or I think it was 1867. When that person's mother was unlawfully present here and the father was not a U.S. citizen. That's 99% of people that come over. 99%, especially on the southern border, was not a lawful permanent. The father wasn't a citizen nor lawful permanent resident with a green card. Okay? Was not meant to extend to that person, that child. Was not. Number two, when that person's mother, it's going to be the inverse in this case. That person's mother, her presence in the U.S. at the time of said person's birth was lawful but temporary as well, such as the visa waiver program, visiting on a student visa, etc. And the father was not a United States citizen or a permanent lawful resident at the time of the child's birth. They were not meant to ever be covered. We just read what Mr. Howard said. He was never intending that to be covered. Mainly, it was to cover freed slaves. That's it. That's what he meant. And even if we take that and go, okay, well, we'll extrapolate that to today's world because we don't want to pass another amendment because we're lazy. That's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. It's not. That's the way it is. It's the way it should be applied. But even with that, I'll even argue and say, okay, it should apply not just to former slaves because it has no value today. It still is the intent of the guy who wrote it that he put in language in there that specifically covers or does not cover only a specific segment of people that do not meet the guidelines. That's his point. Any foreign alien who's here unlawfully cannot claim it. The kids born here, they're also unlawful. The moment they're born, they're unlawful because the parent's unlawful. They can't get citizenship when you're unlawful. They don't want to give it to them with their parents being here illegally. That wasn't the key. And you go back to the ARK case. It's Wong ARK, ARK. You go back to his case. That was what the court said because they specifically state in that decision that his parents were here legally. Even though they went back to China, doesn't matter. They were here legally when he was born. Therefore, he was a citizen of the United States under the 14th Amendment. That's it. That's the case. And that's what they're going to rely on in these injunctions is the Wong ARK case. They're going to say, look, it applies wholesale. That's not really what it says. That's not what it says. So his new policy is going to be that U.S. or no department or agency of the United States government shall issue any documents recognizing citizenship or accept documents from a state, local government purporting to recognize citizenship of the United States to people whom, one, this is important, it's the same reiteration of what we just said, when that person's mother was unlawfully present, unlawful presence in the U.S., and that person's father was not a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth. Number two, when that person's mother's presence was lawful, meaning here on a visa, but temporary, and the person's father wasn't a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, lawful permanent resident, at the time of said person's birth. These people are not entitled anymore to citizenship. They were never supposed to. This is the president's argument. And I think using Mr. Howard's uh, um, statements from the amendment that he wrote, that he never intended to include these people. These were always excluded. That's the whole point. So Trump is hanging his hat on that as an argument, and I think it's probably going to be a close one. I think you'll see a 5-4 decision. It may go against him, but it's a good chance he might be right and be held to be correct. And so, I mean, because clearly Congress has authority to exclude natives and then include them later on. That's a problem for uh, the other side who has filed injunctions to stop this. I think it's a good argument. And like I said at the beginning, I never even read it this way in law school because they don't teach you that. You read it and you don't really look into it and you just assume, well, it's whoever's born here is a citizen. No, we've looked at Mr. Howard's comments who wrote the damn amendment. They aren't. They have to have legal parents. Parents have to be here legally. 99% of these people are not legal. They're not legal. So the question is, should they get citizenship if illegal? That's an issue. And that's going to be the issue for the courts. All right. So thanks, guys. That's just a quick look into it. I still took 20 minutes too long. I knew I would. But if you would like, subscribe, share, etc., leave a comment, and I'll talk to y'all later. And maybe we'll pick up. Maybe we'll brief the Wong Art case. It's Mr. Wong Ark. I can't say his name. Let me know if y'all want to do that. Okay. Thanks.